year is turning, the nights are drawing in, but people still sit out on the west cliff in the last rays of the evening sun, watching the mist creeping in on the beach. The last stragglers heading home. It's that liminal time which makes us think of home and is ripe for storytelling. Let's go in and put the kettle on and settle down in the big armchair. Hello, I'm Peter John Cooper. I like to try different ways of telling stories, and today's combines several elements: spookiness, a love story, a story of loss and regret, all told in my favourite verse form. It's very short because it's meant to be listened to over a number of times. Close your eyes and enjoy it as you would a piece of music. It's called Forsaken. He heaves himself up from the deep. The white flesh hangs in ragged strips, mauled by mackerel, gnawed by wrasse, licked by garfish and the scad, and picked by conger, bream and bass. The white bones gleaming where they show, where they're no longer tissue-clad, are polished by the rub of sand and tide. Around his shoulders, heavy chain, 2.5 fathoms red with rust, still padlocked to his wrists and sides, still bonds his bones with bands of pain. Across the midnight sands he comes. He pulls himself because he must, up on the promenade where no one sees, the coloured lights from the arcade flashing soundless in the breeze. Link by link he drags his weary load up the zigzag path, through the dust, climbing ever higher up the cliff, with rattling locks and dragging chains, elements of sky and air he only dimly recollects. He cannot hear the distant striking clock that tolls the hours before the dawn, when he must return from whence he came, down to the depths, before he can ever come again. Some moonless, tideless, restless night, forced once more by timeless pain. Across the cliff-top grass he goes, deadening his dragging way, beneath the pine, dark and crooked by the tides of wind, charred by lightning, torn apart, if he could smell their piney scent, the scent of seas as dark as wine, it might console the dragging of his heart. Along the shuttered shop fronts of the night, the health food shop with shelves of dust, the gallery with garish sea-like daubs, the chemist's estate agent's paper shop plastered with postcards, plugging pine beds, pushchairs, Pilates classes, carpets, cookers, electric clocks, and cars and council house exchanges. Stops by the church, empty, locked, one small lantern dully lit in memory of all those lost at sea. But there is no succour for him, his soul dredged up, discarded in the deep. And block by block he searches through the town, the place he used to know so well. Frantic now, the tide is running fast, here or here. The recollections dim, there's only one sharp point of pain, one white-hot needle ache that's driving him. It must be here. He stands at last, outside the very room where she dances, slowly twirling in the light, her honey hair wrapped round her sunstroke shoulders. He sees her dancing with delight. The ragged skeleton watches from the gloom, or would watch, a bay of tears would cry, if little worms and sucking fish had not sucked both his eyeballs dry. At last she turns and draws the blind, the lantern gutters out of sight. If he had ears he'd hear her flickering footsteps on the stair, and another, heavier tread behind. He wrings his bony hands as if he still could feel despair, if his heart had not been pulled apart by lobster, crab and snail. He stands there stupid in the night. One joint detaches. Flesh rots, tendons fail. The knuckles sailors used to throw before the storm was at its height. A bet with Davy Jones below, they'd wager Davy for their lives, staking in desperation precious things, their landside families, children, wives, who never understood the cowardice that only godless desperation brings. And on the step, his winning hand, he leaves the little pile of bone, one finger, one alone, proximal, nearer to the heart, burdened with a ring of gold. Then heaves himself back through the streets. His chains are heavier than he can bear. Across the green down to the sea, many, many fathoms deep. And the children who are waiting there. Well, I do hope you enjoyed that story. I certainly enjoyed telling it. I hope it may have posed some questions about what was going on. It's a type of story that goes back to the very roots of storytelling, when stories meant rather more than they do to us today. I'll see you next week.